Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt
And I'm
Roast.
Jessica Bun Bun.
We are here with our reaction and review for Paradise Season 2, Episode 5. I want to level with you guys from the start. I
hmm
went through quite possibly the biggest range of emotions watching this episode that I have for any hour of television so far this year.
hmm
For the first 95% of this, I loved every second. I thought it was phenomenal, compelling, well acted, great entertainment.
Yes.
The final few minutes made me so irrationally mad. I wanted to just open the window and just shout at anyone who was nearby, like, why would you do this? Like, even still, why, Dan Fogelman, would you do this?
Because this is what Dan Fogelman does, and he does best. He always has something where you think you're watching a story a certain way, and then at the end, he turns it around on its head and it's something else. And that is why, as much as I was going through this and I was like, man, Dan really wants me to believe that Gary is this great guy. That while he had this, morally ambiguous moment where he's like, falling in love with Teri and tried to kiss her, and she was like, no, I can give you friendship, I can give you family, but I can't give you that. And he was like, okay, no problem. They went on to be best friends. Everything is great. I was just like, when is it going to turn on its head? And there were some clues throughout this that Gary was the bad guy, but they were so small. You blink and you miss it.
I miss them. And I think the other part of it was I rationalized some of the things that I saw from Gary that made me feel like, okay, yeah, he's got some problems. He had a sense that there was some really bad stuff happening with Bean's parents in the early going when he
He
was a
did.
mailman. He didn't do anything about it. So I knew this guy was flawed. I know, oh, you're falling in love with Teri, somebody who is married and committed to Xavier. That's not great. But because he had these flaws, I was willing to take everything else at face value. And that's why, with respect to the storytelling, not knowing where it's going, I feel personally like the end of this episode is a mistake. And I feel like
Mm.
something that we can break down a little bit more. I don't think
Mhm.
we needed to go to the extreme. Oh, Gary is actually a very, very bad guy who's probably
Very
gonna do something
bad.
bad to Xavier. I'm just like, why?
Xavier, you're in trouble.
Yeah, like, why did we need to go here? But we will get more into that, exactly what Gary did, because there's parts of that that are still a little bit confusing.
Yep.
Before we do, though, be sure to hit that subscribe button because we will be here with more coverage of Paradise throughout the rest of season 2.
Mhm.
We love theorizing about the show, and we
Yeah.
love hearing what you guys have to say about it. I mean, this show is ripe for theorizing, perhaps more so than any other out there.
Absolutely. Also, be sure to join our memberships. It really helps out Matt and I here at the channel. And right now, we are covering exclusively on our memberships Monarch Legacy of Monsters. So be sure to join that. And thank you so much to everyone who has.
Thank you guys. We really, really appreciate that. Let's just start before I get too angry all over again about actually explaining what it is that we really saw and how Gary managed to do whatever nefarious thing he may have done here.
Okay, so there were a few little clues throughout this while we were like getting the story and seeing the story of Gary, Enos meeting up with Bean, taking Bean at the last second, as the world was collapsing. One of these moments was when Teri showed up, where Teri saw Bean, Bean saw Teri. They were standing together. Gary's running out with eggs. He's like, come on, Bean. And Bean grabs Teri's hand to stay with her, who he has met for a second. At that minute, I was just like, kids are really intuitive. So, like, if he doesn't want to go with Gary, the man who got him out of his house, who's like, I'm going to take you away from here. The world is, collapsing. I am going to help you get through this. And he's like, no, I'd rather stay with this person that I have just seen across the street rather than you. I was kind of like, something's not right here with this.
It was odd. And I mean, I will still say, in that moment, I tried to rationalize that too, where I was sitting back and feeling like, all right, Bean just heard this big argument between Enos and Gary on the
Yeah.
mail truck, and maybe that explains he doesn't want to be a part of that drama anymore. So I just lied to myself and I was like, okay, that's it. There's nothing else to worry about here, Matt. You're fine.
Okay, then Dan Fogelman is focusing on Enos throughout sort of
Yeah.
the years that have passed, where we see, Gary has given her this radio. Yes, there's this moment where he's falling in love with her. He tries to kiss her. She's like, no, but their friendship continues. It continues to grow and on and on and on. And you see other people in the post office bunker also getting together and having friendships, having romances, having these real connections. And then you see Enos, and they've got him on the side here where he's coming across as not like bitterly jealous or anything like that, but it almost came across to me as someone who really wanted to be able to make those connections as well, but just couldn't figure out how to do it. And that made sense from when we first met Gary and Enos. They were both like, online gamer guys that didn't really have anybody. And they said that to each other. Oh, I don't, really have a circle of people that I lean on or can trust or anything kind of like that. So they were really leaning into Enos being this person who was going to betray him and, got Teri caught and taken away and everybody's taken away. I was like, is it really just this plainly that Dan's is going to lay it out like this? It just felt like too much of a push. But then there was that moment near the end where Enos actually goes to Teri and he's like, listen, like, I don't hate you. Yeah, I didn't like you for a while and I did break your radio. I'm really sorry about that. That was like, okay, this is the moment that either he really did this stuff or he didn't.
The characterization of Venus is phenomenal throughout this
So
episode.
good.
And I say this because
It's such a good episode.
I have known a lot of Venuses in my life. I
Me
have
too.
been around these guys who, one, like the game a lot, are a little bit more, I want to say, introverted, but they just don't connect with the outside world. And then they make all of these assumptions. Like, it was dark, but it was also pretty funny that Enos was, oh, I'm going to get this nurse in here, and then this nurse is going to be, and then the nurse ends up being married to someone else. And like, all of that was really, really funny.
But that was also one of the things that made me think that it wasn't Enos, because even though they had that happen where it's like, oh, I'm going to bring this nurse in here, and she ended up getting married to someone else, he handled it really well. Watching everybody, all these different connections coming together, even Gary becoming closer and closer with Teri, where Enos was kind of like, oh, Gary was my best friend. Now he's becoming best friends with Teri. Oh, I don't like that. I broke your radio. He was pretty honest about a lot of stuff. So I was just kind of like, and then he turned on everybody? For what reason? Like, none of this is adding up anymore.
Well, here's the stage of denial I was in about 5 or 10 minutes before the twist at the end of the episode came out. I really felt like we were building to some direction where, all right, maybe Enos isn't that bad of a guy, but we have seen that he can be overly assertive. He doesn't exactly have the best social skills. So I was sort of wondering, did he just say the wrong thing to a group of people who would have come in here, and it's a misunderstanding that leads to all this happening? And because Gary is also very socially awkward, but also wants to be, clearly with Teri, with being that he's blowing all this out of proportion in his head and feeling like this was some big betrayal, because we've seen misunderstandings within the world of Dan Fogelman before, where a small emotional conflict turns into something so much more, like what happened with Randall and Kevin on This Is Us, where they had this big falling out for a while that made all of us so upset.
Oh my goodness, did it ever. One of the best TV moments ever.
Yeah, it was so good. So it really felt like this was possible for me, that I could see that Gary would blame Enos for something like this without Enos having to become some really, really terrible person at the same time. It's just really extreme emotions that have been born out of them being so isolated from the rest of the world.
So here we also have Xavier, who's hearing this story. He's like, okay, great. So who has Teri? Oh, the people on the train. Okay, great. I'm going to build this thing to be able to make an explosion over here, and then I'll get in and I'll get Teri. And now that we're here, coming to the end where we see Enos and we see Gary at the train, and they're like, yeah, so we're just like heading across the country. We're meeting up with Link and his group and sort of like rebuild with everybody. Hey, do you want a coffee? You want to come? We're leaving in 2 weeks. If you guys want to get on the train, no problem. Peace. See you in 2 weeks. I was like, Oh, she's not on that train. There's no way. And then, of course, we have the whole scene afterwards where Enos is saying the same thing. He's just like, cool. She doesn't actually have to drive alone in this mail truck or whatever. She can just get on the train with these guys and head on down. How great is that? That's totally going to work out. Then we see Gary do what he did and kill him so that Enos does not go back and tell her that she has a way out and Bean sees. So tinfoil hat.
All right, all right.
There's only a couple of ways that this is going at this point. She is not on that train getting ready to go back because they said they were leaving in 2 weeks. And here we've got Gary saying it's been 12 days since she's been taken. She is not taken by the people on the train. That's not it. So for me, two things have happened. Either Bean heard this, which he did, ran back to Teri and was like, we're in trouble. We need to get out of here. This just happened. Let's go. And they got in the truck and they just started driving, which makes it then kind of makes sense why Gary then is like, I don't really know where she is or how to get to her kind of thing. I think she's with these people on the train. They could have taken her somewhere else, but these people know where she is. And she is just out on the go and he needs to get rid of the situation so he can go get her. Or he's got Teri and Bean locked up somewhere and his plan is, and this is what I think is happening, his plan is to set up Xavier to go into this camp of the people on the train and make this big explosion, make it feel like he's coming to hurt them or do something, and they will take him out. And that way Gary can be like, your husband is dead. I didn't do this. We can be together now. And that's what I think is happening.
This is where I get a little bit confused at the episode, but also just frankly upset about what we got here because I don't understand Gary thinking, and I think there's a very good chance what you're saying about him just having Bean and Teri isolated somewhere. Like, there's a really good chance that's the case. It's really dark, and that's just making me sit back and be like, why would you think that Teri would ever want to be with you after something like this? After you forcibly put her somewhere that's not her home or has been her home for this past little while. Teri's obviously a really smart woman, and Gary, you've had your moments of being sensitive and caring, but you've also had moments where you've gone off the rails, and she's been able to detect that right away. I just don't understand why you would ever believe whatever this plan of yours is actually going to work. But at the same time, I can also see the other idea you brought to the table here, which is that they're just off in the wind somewhere, and he doesn't actually know. But all of this brings me back, though, to the thing I'm struggling with the most. And I'm going to make another This Is Us comparison, so apologies to everyone who has not watched this show. One of my favorite characters on This Is Us was Miguel, to the point. Yeah, everybody just sit with this for a moment.
I loved Miguel.
Everyone should love Miguel. And I, as a slight aside, I love ice cream. Sometimes I'll eat just like a bite or two of it because I don't eat too much of it because it'll make me sick. After the Miguel episode of This Is Us, not only did I cry, I wanted to just sink into a whole tub of ice cream until I was sick because I didn't deserve to be healthy after watching what transpired there. But what made Miguel so interesting and fascinating as a character was he did have these complicated feelings for someone who loved his best friend. And it was messy, but it was interesting and compelling, and it was layered. I had hoped so much, not that we were going in the same direction here with Gary, but that we were going to get something more emotionally layered where, yeah, Gary may have still had these feelings, but he ends up dying in this effort to save Teri, to get Teri back with the man that she truly loves. And like, that would have been so endearing and fascinating and layered. And instead they have turned him into this like mustache twirling villain in a lot of ways. And I just feel like I've seen, oh, this is the jealous guy who wants to be with the woman no matter what the woman feels like. This is on so many other shows.
It really is, because it does feel very much like he's setting Xavier up to just go die so that he's then able to go and be with Teri, whether it is that he's got her captured somewhere and he hasn't thought that far ahead, or she is taken off in the truck. And at this point, Gary's like, perfect, Xavier's here. Let's deal with this problem. Then I'll go get her.
Yeah, and I think that what Paradise has done an extraordinary job at over the past season and a half is introducing all these characters who are really, really morally complex. And we sit back and kind of question, are they a good person? Or are they a bad person? I mean, Sinatra is a great example of this.
Yes.
She's done some terrible things, but she clearly cares about her family. I think whatever's going on with Alex, I legitimately feel like she's trying to save the world here. Now, if Gary has done something terrible or is setting up Xavier, there's no real ambiguity here. Gary's just a really, really bad person, and that kind of goes opposite everything else this show has done.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, from what we know about the people on the train and they're meeting up with Link and
Yeah.
everything that's been presented to us, they are not here to hurt anybody. They ended up like coming out, guns a blazing because they came in guns a blazing, right? Like that's kind of how it's going to work out. But having them be brought in, have some coffee. Hey, you want to come with us? There's always room on this train. This is when we're leaving. Pop on by. Let's go, sort of thing. He's definitely setting it up so that this group, if they think that they're being attacked, they will attack back.
Yeah.
And Xavier will be gone.
That's obviously something that could happen here. And I feel like Xavier's going to make it through. Like, I'm not too worried about that. You're not going to get rid of Sterling like you did Shailene Woodley, right?
Yeah, I'm very surprised that with the whole story that he was told, and then at the very end, Xavier's like, I feel like you're not telling me the whole truth. That's right, I'm not telling you the whole truth.
Yeah.
He's leaving out the murder and all that, but he's like, I was in love with your wife. I had told her so. She was like, no, but those feelings were there. That I'm hoping that coming clean about that, one, that lie, two, that his feelings were that deep for Teri, that maybe it will make Xavier take a minute to actually really look at the train group before he decides to go in there and do this.
Yeah, I think he can't let his emotions go completely into overdrive. And I know it's hard for him. Like, that's one of the reasons why Xavier had a hard time in this episode in particular, is because he's so much down the hole of, I need to save Teri. I need to get to Teri no matter what. And I understand you've went to the other side of the country for her. You haven't seen her in years. Like, your devotion is very clear, but he has to take a step back and really think about things. And I mean, at the same time, it does also make me feel like, can Gary take a step back and think about things? He's an awful person who's done awful things, but is this still destined to end in this kind of classic good versus evil showdown? Like, could it, if you're going in this direction, could you make it at least a little bit more nuanced than, oh, he's just sort of a traditional jealous bad guy now?
Well, the thing that's also interesting about this season in general is that there aren't that many traditional bad guys.
Yeah.
Most of the people, like the Links and Sinatras, everyone is a little more complex than that and have deeper reasons for what they're doing. And we have come across quite a few groups. Even the train group is like, let's have a coffee together. Let's have whatever. That everybody does seem quite accommodating. Everyone in the last episode with Annie, this whole family came down to help out. That people want to help people, and people, want to be able to trust and live with other people. But there's always going to be those bad eggs down there. And since we've had so many groups all season long that have been good people, it made sense that sooner or later we were going to find a rotten one.
I think I'm just so torn up about it because I spent this whole episode really wanting to root for this guy.
Yes.
And that's the thing.
It's the Dan Fogelman special.
It is the Dan Fogelman special, but you already did enough to make me question him. You did not need, I just feel like they didn't need this. Now, a lot of people might disagree with me. I think there was another way to get Gary out of the equation here. But I mean, there's no denying it is a good setup for what's going to be coming up next, because Xavier is a really, really smart guy. And I think he's able to read the, oh, I'm in love with you confession as enough of a confession that his curiosity has been satisfied, because that's not something you would want to admit to somebody, especially if that person is the husband of the woman you're in love with. So I think Xavier is probably like, okay, I understand all that. I'm going to be the bigger person here. I'm going to be like shaking your hand. You really helped my wife. I appreciate it moving forward. And Xavier might not see it coming because of that, and I do understand where that's going to lead plot-wise. One thing I will say, though, in getting back to talking about everything I loved about this episode, is all the setup that they did, the exposition, the building up of even this marketplace where we see Xavier and Gary go in order to get supplies. The way that they had built that up, so where you have a guy, a shopkeeper who doesn't really want to give anything away at first, there's some trust issues there. It made me feel like there were enough dynamics and they introduced so well who these people were, what they stood for, how their sort of society worked. I could have watched a whole season of this dynamic. I thought just the world building in a really, really small amount of time in this episode was so effective, so immersive. Dan really has a talent for this stuff. And this also makes me angry again because there's all this discourse about how they're still ending this show with season 3. There's so much more than 3 seasons worth of story here. Like even all the individual characters, I came to really love all of them in such a tiny amount of time.
It's very weird that we only have 3 episodes left and we have spent 1 in the bunker. We have spent almost the entirety of this season outside of the bunker.
Yeah.
Not nearly enough time inside of the bunker, which is, I have liked this season, but it has also felt very disjointed because we have been sort of jumping around to all these different spots. I kind of wish that they had more balance with it, that we have a little more of what is going on inside the bunker, because we've had so much outside that it feels like this one episode we had now just feels kind of rushed through to get to that ending where, we've lost the president, we got Robinson there being set up, all of that. And then nothing else. We're just kind of back in the outside world again. We got to get back to Link. We got to get the train to Link. We got everything. Where's Teri? All this stuff that's going on the outside. It almost felt like they needed to just not be in the bunker this season at all.
Yeah.
Which is, I know, going to be, people can be like, no, we need the bunker. Yeah, I wanted the bunker too. I really like the stuff that was in the bunker. It's just, there needs to be a little more give and take on it. It can't be this much outside of the bunker and 1 episode in.
I'm going to propose a couple different schools of thought here because there is this part of me that feels like maybe this next episode will spend a lot of time in the bunker again. But then I also wonder, tinfoil hat here, if we're going to spend a lot of this next episode watching Teri get rescued by Xavier, whatever happens to Gary happens. And then they go all the way back to Colorado. And then sort of the final shot is they return there. But then as it turns out, Link and his whole group are in the bunker now and nothing is exactly like we thought. And then they're going to have to spend a whole episode with like flashbacks having to explain how all these turnabouts happen. Because we do kind of need to know, did Link go into the bunker? What happened when he did? Who's really in charge of Paradise now? Like, there are still all these questions.
Yeah, it just feels like this president story that's going on feels like a completely different show. It doesn't feel like it's been fleshed out enough at this point. All the other stories have now connected in a really good way. Everything with Xavier and Teri, all these groups going out to Colorado to get to this bunker. Link is out there to get to this bunker. The baby's on the way to the bunker. All of the outside world is on their way there. And then inside it's like, we got a murder mystery. Oh, we've got this person is dead now. And now we've got Robinson. We're framing her. And I'm just like, why?
Well, Dan,
it's not connecting the way that it should.
You needed more than 8 episodes. I don't know why this show was only 8 episodes long. I don't know if he felt guilty because Sterling worked for him for so many years. He was just like, I don't want to take up all your time anymore, Sterling. So I'm going to make all these episodes kind of short in the span of a season. It's just that
we needed more.
We needed a lot more. And he's cutting off a lot of potential for what's an excellent show. This is still an awesome episode, despite my own misgivings with the ending that I just wish they had more confidence in how much of it we needed to have, because I think we all would have been down for 10, 12 episodes.
Or if they maybe, for me, packaged it a little bit differently, that maybe this bunker episode of everything that happened with the president, Sinatra and Jane and Robinson and all that was just later, and they just moved this Gary episode here so that we had all the outside stuff happening up until everybody gets to Colorado, and then you give us what's going on in the bunker, and then it all gets the knock knock. Oh, who's there? It's Link. Oh, cool. Well, this guy's dead, and now we've got this guy at the door, and oh, look, it's Xavier and Teri.
We'll hope that they kind of tie everything together over these final few episodes, but that is where we are coming out of Paradise Season 2, Episode 5. Give us your take on this episode. Did you see the ending coming like Jess did? Were you completely floored by it and angry like I was? And also hit that subscribe button for more coverage, and you can support us further by joining our memberships. We are covering Monarch, Legacy, and
Yep.
Monsters there. Thank you so much,
Thank
and
you.
we will see you here next time.